Greetings from Tokyo, I'm Trip, and welcome to the Hammer of Wrath. This week, you and I are going to return to the Cursed City and face the Garrison of the Damned. Let's go. Thanks for joining me in the studio. Today, we are going to leave the grim darkness of the far future behind for a week and take another trip into the Cursed City. But first, I want to talk to you about parks. Like any large metropolitan area, Tokyo has a lot of parks. Frankly, they're essential to city living. The ability to escape the concrete jungle, even for a weekend, is absolutely essential to your mental health, and Tokyo has some of the best parks I've ever been to in the world. The largest of which is called Showa Kinen Koen, Koen being Japanese for garden or park. It is an absolutely massive municipal park on the western outskirts of Tokyo and is absolutely worth the hour commute on the train from the central Tokyo wards. Within the park are gigantic verdant fields where you can play soccer or fly a kite, large oak trees to sit under, groves of sakura or cherry blossom trees that come into blossom every March, gigantic children's playgrounds with trampolines, slides, and other places where they can explore and adventure, a traditional Japanese tea house and bonsai garden, as well as incredible food stalls where you can get everything from a Turkish kebab all the way to an ice-cold beer. It is absolutely incredible and honestly one of my favorite places in all of Tokyo. Now, the exact opposite of that would be the doom and gloom of Ulfenwatch, and once again we return. As we established last time, there are far too many models to paint in a single go, so we've decided to break this down into chapters, and this week, it's the Garrison of the Damned. Our hero, Esmerelda Braskov, faces off against Watch Captain Halgrim and his shambling skeletons of the Ulfenwatch. So let's get started, and I'll show you how I painted everything. I began, of course, by removing all the parts from the tightly packed sprues that were included in the box. Now, the kit comes with 10 skeletons, and there are some duplicates there, but they've actually done something very clever where the upper torsos can be swapped around, and so no two skeletons are exactly the same. Now, once I'd gotten the kit together, I then applied some Games Workshop texture paste. I believe this is Astral Granite or Sterling, one of the others, I can't remember the names of them. To add some additional corrosion, and then set about priming the models with Vallejo Black Primer. Now, knowing that the red of their robes is going to be the main color, I went ahead and airbrushed that on. Just sort of save myself some time and make things go a lot faster. And here I'm using a gory red from Vallejo as a base, and then a blood red to sort of punch those colors up. And when that's dry, I'm going to go through it. I'm just applying Games Workshop Contrast Blood Angels to all the cloth. That unifies the red colors, makes them really punchy, but sort of dark, and also settles into the recesses to add additional shading. Now, the next step on all of these, of course, is to just paint the skeletons, and here, we're not being careful unless we're around the red of the cloth that we've already painted. So you see on the hand here, being a little careful, and then as I get away from that, just slopping the paint on as quickly as I can. In some cases, this took 2 coats. I am using Ushabti Bone here, which is a pretty good layer paint from Games Workshop, but if you use too much water with it, you'll need to apply 2 coats. And once that's dry, we're just going to work our way around the model here, applying Games Workshop Contrast Skeleton Horde. In this case, I mean, what else are you going to use, really? The name's right on the bottle. And it spreads along the model really nicely. And then on all the leathers and the halves of the spears and the scabbards and things, we're going to use Games Workshop Contrast Wildwood. And then we're just going to apply that across all of those surfaces and then use the brush to control to make sure that it's not pooling up anywhere we don't want it to pool. So in this case, just running it along, allowing the paint to do what it does and catch all of those details. Next, I'm going to use lead belcher on all the metallic parts, like the armor on the back of the helmet here, or in the case of the scabbard on the buckles or sort of latches that you might find. Here I'm using Balthazar gold on the shields and all the plates. I wanted something sort of copper-like, and although this is called a gold, it definitely has a very warm orangey tint to it. It looks much more like copper. And I'm just going to work my way around the model, applying that to all of the armor plates and panels. Now, once that's dry, the first thing I'm going to do is we'll apply 2 coats of Agrax Earthshade across all the metallic parts, from the copper all the way to the lead belcher. This is going to give the armor a dirty down, grimy, sort of rusted appearance. I actually prefer this over just using null oil. It ages it up. Now, this is the really fun part. I picked this up. This is Games Workshop Nihilak Oxide. It's a technical paint that looks like patina on copper surfaces, and we want all of our skeletons to be sort of decrepit and all their gear to be rusted apart, and so we have applied this really great paint to them. Moving on to Watch Captain Halgrim, we're going to use a lot of the same techniques here. We're going to prime in black, and then knowing we got those flowing robes, we're going to apply our 2 airbrush reds, and then using Blood Angel's contrast, just work our way across all of the fabric, unifying everything, settling into the recesses. And then again, we're just going to use a Ushabti bone here to cover all of our skeletal parts, and also the haft of the spear, because we know that's going to work really well with the contrast wildwood. And again, just working your way around the model with Skeleton Horde, getting into all the details, accentuating the bare parts of the skeleton that are showing. And because this is a hero model, we want a little more detail, I'm going to use a little plague bearer flesh here to sort of imply molting and rotting flesh that's still left around his scalp and some other areas. Now, because he's the Watch Captain, I want to set him apart from the Ulfenwatch proper, and so instead of like the rank and file having copper armor, we want him to have steel armor. So in this case, I'm using Runefang steel, just working my way around the model. And when that's dry, 2 coats of Agrax Earthshade to dirty down the armor. And then I'm going to work my way around the model here. I'm using orange and brown, sort of in a very watery combination, to create these light rust patches all over the armor where we see the corrosion and parts eaten away. Where the armor is deteriorated, that's where the most rust is going to be, so I'm sort of accumulating it there. And then I work my way up to a pure orange on the parts where there would be a lot of rust. Finally, moving on to our hero, I've used the airbrush here to apply a top-down zenithal of Runefang steel, and then I airbrushed Gullum and Glaze over top of that, and then I just take the Runefang steel and a dry brush to bring back out all the highlights and keep that blue in the recesses to define the armor. Then, much like on the skeleton, I'm going to work my way around here with some khakis and some Ushabti bone, where I want to use contrast colors over top, like the boots and the gloves. I know I'm going to use contrast wildwood or some other colors. Just sort of laying down a base for all these on the areas where I know that I want there to be a leather or other material. And once those colors are dry, here on the trousers, I'm just working my way through with some Agrax Earthshade, bringing out the details of the recesses on the pants. And then on the gloves and boots, going back to that contrast wildwood, honestly, it's exceptionally fun to use. It works really well over things that are like this, organic shapes, bones, gloves, anything with folds in it. Here I'm using it on the eagle trophy that's draped over her shoulders, and we're just going to brush this all along the model, being careful anywhere where there's armor, but sort of slopping it on anywhere else, letting it do its thing into the recesses. And then I'm going to use Macragge Blue on the tabard and cape, just working my way around the model. In most cases, this covers in a single coat, but there were some places where I used a little too much water and had to do a second coat. And then I'm going to take like a sky blue, a lighter blue, and then I'll mix that with the Macragge Blue and make a medium value. And I'm just going to brush that on all the highlights and folds, working my way around both the cape and the tabard, just bringing out the highlights, as we really want to contour the cape and, you know, accentuate those folds and highlights. Here where the knife she has on her hip is causing the cape to poke out is a really great example. You just go through and hit the highlights on those. And then lastly, just a pure sky blue and a zero brush, getting all the edges just to sort of accentuate the tips of the turned over parts. Now, moving on to the face, it's just Kislev flesh, and then once that's dry, I'm going to apply a shade of Reikland flesh shade, and then just going to go back in with that Kislev flesh. And while I pay my golds, I want to take a moment to thank my patrons, my mallet bearers, Adam Fox and Josh Hannon, my Sledgehammer members, Cody Newton and Josh Kreba, and of course, my Thunder Hammer bearers, Matt Mitchum and the Rascal. And lastly, I'll paint her hair using Fenrisian Gray and Basilicanum Gray contrast. And there you have it. Imelda Braskoff stands strong against the Ulfenwatch and Watch Captain Halgrim in a battle to the death. I hope you enjoyed the video. It was my genuine pleasure to make and share it with you. If you'd like to support the channel, check out the Patreon linked in the description below. We have a small and growing community there. Joining at any level grants you access to our private Discord server where every day we encourage each other to become better hobbyists. Or you can check out the t-shirt shop, bakingsodatees.com, where we create one-of-a-kind designs available nowhere else. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you on the next one.